right? I mean, would you give me the same answer about the Holocaust? Do you have to be an expert in that to know that it was wrong and that it happened?
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing. Mr. Rittner, let me start with you. You're with Intel, right?
Yes, that's correct.
We've been asking questions about Russia. Let me just ask you a question or two about China, if I could. Why is it that your company is investing so much in China, particularly in Chinese artificial intelligence and semiconductor startups?
Yeah, China is the second largest economy in the world. Any proceeds that we actually make in China, we reinvest back into the U.S. so that we can contribute to U.S. leadership.
Well, wait a minute. So you're telling me it's good for the United States that you are investing billions of dollars in Chinese artificial intelligence? Let me just read you from a Financial Times article. Intel's venture capital arm has emerged as one of the most active foreign investors in Chinese artificial intelligence and semiconductor startups at a time that the chip maker is receiving billions of dollars from Washington to fund a technological arms race with Beijing. Is the money that you're getting from the United States government enabling your investment in China?
At this point, we have not received money from the United States, but the money that we're to receive is invested entirely in the United States to grow semiconductor manufacturing.
You have 43 China-based technology startups. Since your venture fund was launched in the early 1990s, has invested in more than 120 Chinese groups, including their data provider Crunchbase. I'm still quoting from the FT article. You've continued to back fledgling Chinese companies, even in the past year, even as many American companies have exited the market, the Chinese market that is, under pressure from U.S. authorities. It just seems strange to me that you're spending so much money, even as you're set to receive billions of dollars. By the way, I can't believe that you get no money from Washington, D.C. I find that hard to believe. But why is it that you are continuing to double down on the Chinese market? I mean, is this a good thing? Is it a good thing for Intel to be investing in Chinese artificial intelligence? I mean, they're our chief competitor.
The reason for our investment, Senator, is that there are unique characteristics, technologies that we can leverage so that we can build the greatest products here in the United States.
Well, yeah, I have no doubt that you're able to turn a significant profit off of what you invest in China, but how that inures to the benefit of the United States is opaque to me, not clear to me. What about your relationship with your suppliers in Xinjiang and Uyghur forced labor? Do you condemn the forced labor that the Chinese government and its suppliers use? I think maybe your mic's off.
I'm sorry, Senator. That particular question, I would leave that answer to the experts. I'm not an expert on that.
Well, wait a minute. You're not an expert on whether or not there's forced labor in China?
Correct.
Well, wait a minute. You're not willing to say here today that the Chinese are exploiting the Uyghurs?
I would leave that answer to that question to the experts.
Does it take an expert to know that there's slave labor in China? The Uyghurs are enslaved. Do you know who the Uyghurs are?
I do.
Okay. So are you willing to say that what the Chinese authorities are doing to the Uyghurs is wrong?
Sir, I'm not an expert to be able to make that case.
Good Lord. I can't believe you're saying this. And, what's alarming about this is your company did the same thing. In December 2021, you issued a letter to your suppliers saying that the company is required to ensure our supply chain does not use any labor or source goods or services from the Xinjiang region. But then you apologized for it a week later on Chinese social media, saying that letter was only written to comply with U.S. law. And now you're telling me you don't have a stance on it at all. Is that really your position?
Senator, I'm not in a position to make that statement.
You're not in a position to condemn forced labor in China?
I would condemn forced labor. I'm not an expert to be able to weigh in on whether China is engaging in such actions.
You have billions of dollars of investments in China. You are investing in Chinese artificial intelligence. You are investing in Chinese semiconductors. You are making who knows how much money in China, but you won't say that the Uyghurs being exploited is wrong? What is wrong with you people? That's not a rhetorical question. I can't believe I'm hearing this.
Personally, I believe that slave labor is wrong, yes.
Personally, well, oh, good. Well, I'm glad we've gotten that far. Now, why is your company associating itself with it?
I am not aware that my company is associated with it.
I cannot believe that we are sitting here having this conversation. I cannot believe that it is not easy for you to say that Intel will have nothing to do with forced labor and what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghurs, a religious minority who are enslaved as we sit here and speak today. I can't believe that you won't just clearly say that's wrong, we condemn it, we will have nothing to do with it. This is astounding.
Senator, we do not support or tolerate our products being used in forced labor, slave labor, or child labor.
Yeah, but you just sat here and said that you don't have any idea if it's really going on in China.
I'm not an expert in that.
It doesn't take an expert. Everybody knows that this is the truth, right? I mean, would you give me the same answer about the Holocaust? Do you have to be an expert in that to know that it was wrong and that it happened? I mean, good Lord. I just have to tell you, I can't believe the U.S. government give you any money if this is what you're going to do with it, and this is going to be the position of your company. Let me just ask you about one other thing while I have you here. Intel is laying off, 15,000 workers now in this new plan that you've just announced, or a cost-saving plan for 2025. How many of those 15,000 workers are Americans?
Senator, I don't have a number at this point of who's being laid off. I can tell you that laying off anybody is no easy decision.
You considered all other ways of cost-cutting measures before you laid off the 15,000? Is that what you're telling me?
We are facing economic headwinds, and to be able to make sure the company is operating efficiently, we are going through a downsizing moment.
Did you think it was efficient to give your CEO a 45% pay increase year over year while you're cutting 15,000 jobs? Mr. What is it, Gelsinger, I think it is? He made $11.6 million in 2022. Now he's making $17 million. Is that an efficiency?
I'm not an expert on his salary.
Yeah. Well, you don't appear to be an expert on much, but I tell you what, it should not be hard to say that American jobs are important, American national security is important, and slave labor is wrong. And funding slave labor in China is absolutely an atrocity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You can use the term audit, but there's all kinds of different levels of audits, okay? You're all public companies, correct? So you all have a independent external auditor, correct? Probably one of the big three. Used to be big 8 when I went to college, now we're down to big 3, right? I would imagine export controls are part of that external audit as well, correct? Can any of you speak to that? Because that would materially impact the risks your business are taking if you're not complying with export controls, if you're not complying with sanctions. So I'd imagine your external auditor is auditing your auditing of export controls and sanctions. Can any of you confirm that? Okay, I'd be shocked if your external auditors aren't doing that. But let's, again, we can get down the weeds on audits and not really get anywhere. First of all, Chairman asked, so chips are being diverted. I want to know what complexity of chips, because not all chips are created equal. Somebody in the testimony talked about that, a lot of these chips might have been in the pipeline well before the Ukrainian war started. So again, we can broadly say, okay, chips are being diverted and you guys aren't paying enough attention to this. Again, according to your testimony, it sounds like you're spending a lot of time making sure that these things aren't diverted. It's not an easy process when you've sold these products that have been sitting in a warehouse maybe for a few years. So again, speak to me. I mean, tell me what's actually happening here, or else this just gets all caught up in, again, undefined terms of auditing, and you're not doing enough. And trust me, I realize how intimidating this is, but I'm just asking you guys, tell us how difficult it is to ensure 100% compliance with this stuff, no matter how hard you try? I mean, do I have to call anybody? Maybe we'll start with you, Ms. Stout.
That is a very good question, Senator Johnson and Ranking Member Johnson. And what we've seen discovered on the battlefield are considered dual use, not subject to the EAR or to the export controls, very low end products.
Ms. Scurry.
Thank you, Senator. Additionally, what we have seen in partnering with NGOs who are doing important work in this area, for example, Conflict Armament Research Group, who find these parts on the battlefield, is that they are very old, at least with respect to the AMD parts that they find and come to us and ask for our help in researching. Typically between 5 and 15 years old, sometimes more than 20 years old. We have not yet seen a part from CAR recovered that was post-sanction state.
So, I mean, chips even 15 years ago were quite sophisticated, and they did a lot of sophisticated things, correct? Is there anything that sophisticated in terms of how these are being used, to your knowledge, that would preclude the use of an older microprocessor or chip?
Not to my knowledge, Senator, and like I said, these are the chips that we are being asked to investigate and provide trace data on. They're typically old chips.
Mr. Rittner, would you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I would agree with Tiffany's statement.
So to your knowledge, the Intel chips that may have been found in Russian weaponry, these would generally be older. They may have been already in the pipeline, not highly sophisticated.
Senator, the items that I have seen photos of and seen, and in some of the report outs, are in every case older, 5 to 10 years older.
You were talking about the regular audits of your vetted distributors. Have you found violations in those audits?
At this point, we have not found any direct connection of our sales to items diverted to Russia.
So how do you think these things are being diverted? Are they being pulled from old products? I mean, possibly junk cars, or I mean, what is your assumption in terms of how these chips are getting into Russian-made missiles?
Well, the distribution ecosystem is complex and multifaceted. And so, we may sell a product to a customer who sells to another, and so on. And over time, with trillions of chips in the ecosystem, they make their way. Many of these bad actors find ways to circumvent and
again, if they're 5 to 10-year-old chips, I mean, there's no control you can put in place right now based on a war that started in 2022.
Well, we are auditing our distributors today on our current sales and looking at.
So are you pretty fairly certain, based on the audits you performed, that current manufactured chips are not being diverted? Have you seen any currently manufactured chips have been diverted?
Senator, our audits have concluded that there's no direct linkage between our sales and the items that are being found in Russia.
Ms. Thompson, you mentioned in your testimony bad actors find ways. Can you describe the bad actors you're talking about, and what way have they found to divert these products?
From my understanding and our work in discussing with BIS and NGOs and reading the reports that they have done, it appears that they are able to, through these multiple sales and resales of parts that are very typical in our industry, where something starts with the manufacturer, could go to someone making a very simple module that then goes to the next bigger module maker that then goes to maybe another module in the end equipment. There are multiple stages in there, and they can produce false documents, other materials that are misleading, and then redistribute. Another point that I think is important to make is at TI, old or new parts, our parts are very basic. They are essential, just simple components in a system. Some companies need 5 of the same part. There can be tens, hundreds, thousands of electronic components. We manufacture tens of billions of components a year, so they are very, very commonplace. So they can be if an order looks like it's for a refrigerator, those parts could easily be used to perform a similar.
So one final question about my times. You saw that the chairman put up pictures of components when he was in Ukraine. Has anybody from the committee staff shown you a component of yours and asked you, when was this manufactured? How old is this? How new is this? Do you have any way how this chip got into manufacture of a Russian armament? Has the committee done that and shown you that information to give you an opportunity to look at that? Anybody? Yeah, Ms. Curry.
Senator, we receive requests like that from CAR frequently.
From who?
Conflict Armament Research Group.
Okay.
And sometimes from investigative journalists.
Okay. Have you been able to respond? Have you found anything that's a new chip? Have they present you with anything they go, oh my God, this is a serious diversion?
We've not yet found a new chip, only older chips that predate the sanctions.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you and Ranking Member Johnson for this hearing. Thanks to the witnesses for being here today and for cooperating with the subcommittee's investigation. Following Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and our allies imposed strict export controls against Russia to prevent the Russian military from acquiring advanced U.S. technology, such as the semiconductors that are part of computer chips. I've been working with members of the Homeland Security Committee to improve the enforcement and effectiveness of export controls, and today's hearing is an important step in that effort. Oversight by this subcommittee has found evidence that criminals are breaking U.S. export controls by shipping semiconductors to Eastern Europe, Central Asia, China, and the Persian Gulf, where they are then shipped to Russia for military use. And I just want to highlight something here. There are weapon systems and weapons being used in Russia that were constructed before 2022. And I'm not particularly interested in what chips are in those old weapons. What I'm interested in is that following the imposition of export controls on Russia, yearly semiconductor orders from these regions jumped 2 to 10 times over the previous average. So a question to each of you just quickly, and Mr. Rittner, I think you've already answered this. Does your company track country-specific sales data? And if so, do you do this for both direct sales and from distributors who sell semiconductors on your behalf? So Ms. Stout, we'll start with you.
Thank you for your question, Senator Hassan. We do track by sales, and what we've identified from the reports that have been published with the countries that have, in the KSC report as an example, we have tracked those and we are identifying them as high-risk countries where we are established additional controls to monitor our sales activities.
And do you do direct sale? Do you monitor both your direct sales and those by your distributors?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Next, Ms. Scari.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, we track our sales both direct and through distributor or to distributors by country and region, and especially following the KSC report that identified, jumps and regions of concern. These are among the jurisdictions and countries that we would consider high risk for diversion, where we are applying enhanced diligence efforts.
Okay, Mr. Rittner, I think you answered it, but let's just get you on the record here.
Yes, we absolutely do. We do the same, and I will go on record to say that in some of those countries we have no business at all. We don't sell to Armenia, Belarus, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan.
And your distributors don't either?
No, correct.
Okay. And Ms. Thompson, does your company track country-specific sales data for both your direct sales and for your distributors?
The sales are direct sales to customers, And then with regard to our distributors, we know the distributors that we're selling to. I would need to circle back to confirm the specifics on further tracking, but we generally rely on their export control programs and that they are gathering the data and information they need to comply with U.S. export control laws.
But just to be clear, you get paid by your distributors once they sell, so you have a good idea what the distributors are selling. You don't need them to do their separate process for you to have a good idea of what they're selling.
We will get business information and do business reviews of that data.
Okay, so at what point does each of your companies identify demand changes as abnormal or questionable, so you trigger increased due diligence by your compliance teams to ensure that the chips are not being shipped to restricted nations like Russia or China? Ms. Stout?
Our gray market mitigation team, that is their whole focus in identifying red flags. Part of their monitoring is monitoring patterns in sales as well. So this is part of their diligence.
So what I would like to do and follow up with all of you in writing is just kind of, what's your line? How do you measure when there is a red flag? Ms. Scurry?
Thank you, Senator. We leverage technology and use a risk-based approach to look for red flags, and if we see anything of concern, we won't make a sale. Mr. Rittner.
Yes, as I said, we look at the sales out reports because that's our best set of data, and if we find any suspicious activity, anything that doesn't make sense, we take action.
Okay, and Ms. Thompson.
Yes, at TI, we have a multi-layered approach to determining where and who we can sell to. We have screening against multiple databases that we procure or that we also maintain. We are working with NGOs and BIS to help identify other parties and geographies to be concerned about. We've added heightened screening for customers and certain parts, and we employ manual and automated screening at our disposal.
Well, I thank you for all of this. As I said, I will follow up in writing about kind of how you quantify this, because when we look at the sales data and see these huge jumps, it seems that there is additional work that your companies could do, and we obviously want to partner with you and understand how we can make sure that you are complying and doing what you need to do as partners in this approach we have to sanctions. Mr. Rittner, I want to just close with one question to you. It's really imperative that the U.S. remain the world leader in the development and production of AI technologies. And at the same time, we need to be clear-minded about how this technology can be misused by our adversaries and by malicious actors, such as terrorists and cyber criminals. This year, your company, Intel, released new, highly capable AI chips that are subject to export controls. Adversaries around the world, including China, are obviously willing to break the law to obtain your advanced chips. So how is Intel approaching compliance for your higher-end chips to ensure that you're not allowing our adversaries to steal and develop advanced AI technology?
Senator, thank you very much for that question. To answer that, I would say when we talk about AI chips, there's two types.
Yeah.
One we just recently announced, which is for the AI PC.
Yep.
And it is your on-premise sort of how do you do voice search and how do you do chat GPT.
Yeah.
The ones I think you're probably more concerned would be our accelerator products. And when the export rule was published in October, those products now became subject to the rule, and so we're no longer able to ship those products to China.
Well, I thank you for that. I'll follow up with you in writing about whether there are things that Congress can do to be helpful in this effort. And I appreciate, Mr. Chair, you letting me go over time a bit. Thank you.